Hi everyone, Glenn Davis here. Today we are demystifying FORS and CLOCS. Throughout the webinar, we're going to gain a better understanding of the context and background to both FORS and CLOCS schemes, how the CLOCS standard aligns to FORS, or should I say FORS aligns to CLOCS, the roles and responsibilities of CLOCS champions, making sure it's not just about obligations on the fleet operator, there are responsibilities for those who specify, how to use contracts to require the CLOCS standard, how to monitor compliance to the CLOCS standard using FORS as a benchmark. I think but before we go into any of that though, I think we need to understand the background of FORS. What is it was started by Transport for London in London in 2007. It was part of the first city freight plan, which was launched by the mayor at the time, which was Ken Livingstone. And it was called a Sustainable Freight Distribution, a plan for London. And within that plan, there was 4 key projects, one of which was this thing called the Freight Operator Recognition Scheme, FORS. The focus of FORS was positive engagement with the industry, looking at improving road safety, improving environmental protection, and also operational efficiency. At the time, the engagement with the industry was quite reactive. It was quite possibly even negative, looking at nighttime restrictions, the congestion charge, the impending low emission zone, the penalty charge notices, being issued to vehicles across the capital. Those seem to be a more positive way as to how how Transport for London could help the industry help itself. The scheme was developed during 2007 and it was launched in 2008, and its scope was for any operator delivering to, collecting from, or travelling through London. As I said, 2008, the bronze standard was launched at the CV show. 2009, silver gold standards were published. In 2010, the version 2 of the standard was aligned to UCAS, the United Kingdom accreditation scheme, making sure that there was absolute robustness, quality within the scheme itself. 2011, FORS Practitioner was published and launched, and also Safe Urban Driver Training. 2012, when everybody was gearing up for the games, FORS was included in TfL contracts, and there was a trigger for that, and I'll cover that shortly. First silver and gold accredited members in 2012 too. 2013 saw the rebrand from freight to fleet. Many organisations didn't see themselves as freight, so we thought that fleet was a better descriptor. And then in 2014, FORS was recognised internationally with the Prince Michael Road Safety Award. 2015 was a key point in the history of FORS, in that the FORS Community Partnership was established alongside the Governance and Standards Advisory Group, GSAG. And at that time, the scheme was both commercialised and also nationalised. So that scope of London changed significantly in 2015. 2016, FORS Professional was launched. There's a sub-brand for FORS Training. There was a members conference, the first national members conference, and more awards. 2017, we saw more governance around the executive group, and also working groups around specific sectors. 2018, we tipped the first FORS 5,000th member, and then FORS started increasing its scope within its standards, covering off some hot topics such as security and counter-terrorism. And then in 2019, this year, we're on FORS Standard version 5. So that's the story of FORS. It is a single fleet standard in force across the UK and Europe, and other countries looking to sort of adopt its good practice. Helps operators any size, any type, apply and demonstrate good practice. It covers management responsibilities, vehicles, drivers, and the operation. So covering that whole sort of holistic view of fleet management. tiered levels, ensuring that the baseline level is accessible. We've got this entry level, and then it promotes progression within. And it enables clients and customers to instantly recognize a quality fleet operation. So here's what management vehicles, drivers and operations looks like. All of the policies, procedures, inspections, maintenance, license qualifications, routing, scheduling, specialist goods, etc. That's all encompassing FORS standard. The tiered approach, bronze, a legally compliant operator following good practice. There is some good practice in there, but generally what we have within bronze, we generally apply to the legal requirements. Silver is now an operator that is committed to safety, efficiency, and environmental protection. And then gold is the highest level, operators committed to continued improvement and industry leadership in fleet management. That said, and we do have some figures here from summer 2019, even though the bronze standard is legal compliance with some good practice, and even though many operators book their own audit themselves, they schedule that audit, they liaise with the auditor, they prepare for the audit, we still see approximately at initial audit a third fail, for one or two reasons. That said, at follow-up, that failure rate does reduce significantly to around 5%. So, people are able to address the actions within their action plan and then get themselves up to the levels expected. At the minute, as I said earlier, that the numbers of FORS does sort of it's a reasonable steady state at around about 5,000 operators, just slightly under summer 2019. We do see new operators coming into the scheme every month, but we also see some attrition as well, and some operators moving out of the scheme. But currently sits at around about 1,000, and what we got there is a reasonable spread of the majority are at bronze, probably around about a quarter at silver, and then just over 300 at gold. I mentioned this sub-brand, FORS Professional, comprehensive package of essential training, cutting-edge content, really well-designed training that improves knowledge, improves professional standards, and actually sets a benchmark for training quality. And the training covers the requirements in the FORS standard, whether that covers road risk, environmental impact, or even operational efficiencies. And now these courses are starting to become default must-haves for both drivers and managers. There is this thing called FORS Practitioner. It does build into a recognized qualification, certification, a series of 10 half-day workshops covering fleet policy, road risk, driver fitness and health, driver training and development, post-collision analysis, safe and efficient fleets, fuel use and environmental impact, minimizing the fines and charges, monitoring performance, and also managing noise across the fleet. So really sort of broad spread of topics, and covering pretty much most of the issues that face most fleet operators. There is a competence framework for drivers as well, and a series of training courses that are out there that can be licensed as well by fleet operators and training providers. There's safe urban driving, specific focus on vulnerable road user safety. Around 100,000 drivers have gone through that one single training course. There's a course called Staying Legal, which is all around HGV compliance. We have low city driving, which is the fuel efficiency and environmental awareness training course. Truck Smart, covering load safety, vehicle roadworthiness, and also Van Smart, the essentials for the light goods vehicle driver. Series of e-learning modules, cycle safety, There's a module on that. There's the VanSmart, which complements the classroom training course. Low City, one for drivers, one for managers, also complement the classroom training. We have Smart Driving, which covers road risk, and then Smart Deliveries, which covers minimizing penalty charge notices at the curbside. Road Risk Champion, Road and Collision Investigator, two modules there which support an excellent course in collision investigation that FORS has, and also e-learning module on security and counter-terrorism. So I think the point here is that FORS is not just about an accreditation scheme. There are a whole host of tools, toolkits, training that can be adopted to improve the performance of the operation. So, does FORS work? Reducing costs, certainly. And one thing that FORS has done has made sure that it's built in its own business case model, if you like, and the fact that it extracts data from the accredited fleet operators to demonstrate whether FORS works or not. And the data extracted from those silver and gold operators have demonstrated a 30% reduction in collision costs, a 14% reduction in fuel costs, and a 55% reduction in penalty charge notices. So does FORS work? Then definitely. So that's FORS. Now CLOCS. CLOCS came around a few years after FORS. And there was a specific sort of issue that stimulated CLOCS, and it was around the HGV and the cyclist and the tragic cases that occur in those incidents. Nationally, over 30% of cyclists killed or seriously injured involve a HGV, and in London, over 50% of the cycling deaths involve a HGV. Not just the cyclists, though. Over 20% of pedestrian fatalities involve HGV, and the HGV only represents 4% of road traffic. So there's a massive overrepresentation of the HGV and vulnerable road user fatalities and serious injuries. In London, there were 136 fatalities involving a HGV between 2010 and 2016. So there's still much more to do, even though both FORS and CLOCS as initiatives have reduced the numbers significantly over the years. There's still a lot to do. You don't have to look too far in the headlines to see absolute tragedy out on the roads involving the HGV. It's not all in London, it's all over the country. It is generally those who are vulnerable. But the statement at the top there, so many deaths in one industry sector involving one piece of machinery. If this was the health and safety executive, and if we saw so much, so many accidents at work involving one piece of machinery in one particular industry sector, the health and safety executive would be investigating this and understanding the root cause and probably putting measures in place to prevent those tragedies happening again. However, this is not the HSE's remit, so therefore they don't, the roads are regulated in a completely different way to the way that the workplace is. However, spikes, and there was a massive spike in Stark tragedy in November 2011 when 4 people died over a series of 8 days in London, 2 of which were at the same junction, and it's incidents like this where if the regulators aren't going to take action, then perhaps the industry should. And it was this particular trigger in 2011 that prompted the CLOCS initiative. So what did happen? TfL's immediate reaction was to define road safety measures that could be quickly implemented. What could TfL do itself? And actually, what TfL did was established contractual work-related road risk clauses, work clauses. They were established and they were implemented in TfL contracts in February 2012. Every new contract from 2012 included these clauses, and existing contracts were varied to make sure that they included these clauses. TfL also worked with other public sector organisations to help follow this lead, whether that was the Greater London Authority or the London local authorities, the boroughs. And then, as a result of that, TfL then commissioned independent research to understand why the construction sector was significantly overrepresented in cycling fatalities. So during 2012, the CLOCS study was undertaken. The independent evidence, an organisation called TRL, Transport Research Laboratory, conducted the study, and they found some really stark findings. The management of work-related road risk clearly lags behind the management of more general health and safety. Why? There seems to be an underlying attitude that managing road risk is not a legitimate use of time. Why? It can be seen that the blind spot on the mixer is 50% greater than that of the curtain side. So the curtain side being a general haulage vehicle. Why? There is a need for adherence to a nationally recognised standard on work-related road safety. And that final point there, that final finding and recommendation was a significant trigger. And that trigger was a communication that was made across the whole industry sector, and where FORS had been focusing on the left-hand side of the screen there, the logistic operators. What CLOCS actually did was established the industry bodies. It got the clients together, it got the contracts together, the vehicle manufacturers, and also the regulatory bodies alongside the logistic operators, and created an industry-led response to this absolute tragedy, not waiting for the regulators to come along and create new laws to sort it out. So the CLOCS Standard was launched in December 2013. It focused specifically on road risk, how risk on the roads could be reduced to improve road safety. It brought together a series of existing codes of practice. There was 11 codes of practice that were already in place, including Transport for London's work-related road risk clauses, and brought them into one single standard. It also included requirements for the client, so not just having requirements on the fleet operator, putting those requirements in for the client, and ensured that those requirements were progressive, using the same terminology in the FORS standard. You know, the shall being the absolute obligation, the should being recommended good practice, and the may being something that is optional. So it's got regulator responsibilities, client duties, principal contractor duties, and fleet operator duties. So how does it work? The regulator will write the CLOCS standard into the local plan, being the supplementary planning document, even Section 106 agreements, which are the obligations during a development. The client will then write that CLOCS standard into contracts, ensure the principal contractor has a system in place for compliance checking. Then the contractor will adhere to the CLOCS standard, ensure that their obligations are met, and then require its suppliers to use fleet operators that are accredited to FORS Silver, and also carry out compliance checks within the supply chain. And then the operators responsible for meeting the FORS Silver standard as required by the contract, but also making sure that that flows down to any subcontracted services. So what are the obligations? On the contractor side, the construction logistic plan in place. This means suitable site for logistic operations, safe loading, safe unloading, good access, good egress, and traffic management measures. community impacts must have been risk assessed, delivery management and designated routes in place, FORS Silver embedded into contracts, site access vehicle checks in place, and also injury collisions within the supply chain are investigated. The fleet operator merely accredited FORS Silver. What this means is the drivers will have undergone license checks through the DVLA that have had specific training on vulnerable road user safety. The vehicles will be fitted with a blind spot camera system, a blind spot warning signage, side under-arm protection, and audible left turn warnings. And the operation will be adhering to traffic routes and also investigating its own collisions. So for a local authority to implement this, a simple 5-line paragraph can be put into a local plan. Sample wording has been done. The requirement that all major developments, with a significant impact on the public highway, be supported by a construction logistic plan that is appropriate to the scale of development and incorporates the CLOCS standard to ensure the safety of pedestrians, cyclists, and other vulnerable road users. The hard work is done, whether we're implementing CLOCS through the planning process or whether implementing CLOCS through contracts. All of the information that is needed are in these two guides. The information covers the contractual clauses, it covers the planning requirements. So all of the information has been documented, it's all been legally checked and can just be lifted and used. So who is the CLOCS community? The CLOCS Secretariat, organisation called SecB, Construction Clients Group is within that, representing the major clients within construction. LHC, a public sector procurement organisation, Build UK, representing the Trade Association, and the Considerate Constructors Scheme, which is a well-established quality scheme across construction across the country, and they all operate under the auspice of Transport for London. Then there's the CLOCS Working Group. CLOCS champions include the planning authorities, the client developers, the principal contractors, the fleet operators, and also supporters, the flag wavers of CLOCS. So the client compliance, basically get your house in order. Is there a construction logistic plan in place? Are the site conditions suitable for vehicles designed for the road? Many times they are not, and that is why those vehicles in construction have more significant blind spots. Does the site access and egress enable the safe movement of vehicles? Is there adequate vehicle load and unloading facilities in place to ensure safety? Is traffic routing in place and is it being followed? Is there an effective method for controlling traffic to and from site, and do you have contractual clauses in place requiring FORS Silver? So, talking to the clients, don't just jump to the final bullet. There are a series of other bullets that you have responsibilities for before we jump to the final bullet. Client compliance. So one question that we get asked quite often is, does this mean I've got to refuse every non-compliant vehicle? Well, no, that is your choice. There are 3 levels of compliance, and making sure that we apply these on a risk-based basis. So level 1 is that we monitor compliance levels. We may monitor compliance levels, and because CLOCS and FORS are so established in certain areas now, that actually we might already be 90% compliant without even doing anything. The next stage is then for those who are not compliant that we issue warnings, and we give fair warning to those operators in the supply chain, so we're not actually having a knee-jerk reaction and turning vehicles away straight away. We can give them fair warning to address any shortfalls in their operation. And then when we need to escalate, we can then get to a non-compliance vehicle refusal. And that is where a non-compliant vehicle will be turned away, recorded as a failed delivery, and potentially failed deliveries are a breach of contract. That said, a lot of the enforcement, the compliance, if you like, can be checked online. So FORS has a full list of operators online, and we can check. You can check their status through the FORS on board, who's on board search facility. We can also check the trained drivers. This is behind a registration wall because of GDPR reasons, of course. But signing up to FORS as a champion, then you can access these areas to check this and check some of your compliance remotely. And then there is the overseer dashboard, and again, FORS champions get free access to the overseer dashboard. And what we can do is put in those companies that are specific to us, and then we can get either a map view or a list view of their status. It identifies suppliers by contracts, and we can see the changes in status as well throughout the period of time. And the link to access that is on screen. So CLOCS and FORS, complementary schemes. CLOCS clients, construction clients, have that CLP in place, ensure suitability of site, access and egress, good access and egress, loading, unloading, traffic routing, control of site traffic, and ensuring supply chain compliance. And then the fleet operator answers that question by meeting either silver or gold FORS standard. FORS and CLOCS have been recognized together as two schemes and how they fit together. I mentioned early on the FORS journey and the FORS story that FORS had got the Prince Michael International Road Safety Award in 2014, but also CLOCS got the same award, and the Prince's Premier Award that year for its contribution, bringing stakeholders together to address a very, very sensitive issue. So there is a short animation that you can access. The link is on screen, which is just in a couple of minutes. You probably wish you'd seen that before you'd logged onto this webinar, but just in a couple of minutes you can see how FORS and CLOCS actually work together as complementary schemes, and compatible compliance is organized. So just to summarize, everyone has a role to play. Whether we're regulator, whether we are local authority, whether we're a logistics operator, a construction client, whether we're a property developer, everyone has this role to play. We do need consistency. We do need to make sure we're applying these requirements consistently across the country to make sure that companies can comply more easily. It's a great opportunity for the industry to take ownership of road risk and does not wait for the regulators to tell us we need to do something. We're doing this for ourselves. Contracts and planning conditions demonstrate the business case for change. So when it is a contractual requirement, well, it's a business need. If it's a planning condition, then it's an obligation that we need to undertake. Consistent implementation and monitoring and enforcement does achieve that meaningful change. If there's not consequence of people not complying, then people simply won't comply. So we do need to take positive action in that way. And help and guidance is available on the CLOCS website and also FORS online. Final thought, let's not be complacent. It doesn't take too many crashes out there involving HGVs in supply chains to actually contribute to significant tragedy. 4 incidents just there, 20 people died. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. If you do need to get in touch with us, then either FORS online, CLOCS, or quite happy to take and field your emails.